Renaissance composer Orlando de Lassus was kidnapped several times as a young boy on account of his beautiful singing voice.
Baritone Leonard Warren died on stage just as he finished singing Vertis morir tremenda cosa, which translates as to die a momentous thing.
The London Symphony Orchestra was booked to travel on the Titanic's maiden voyage, but changed boats at the last minute.
On a separate note, none of the Beatles could read music.
Suzanne Vega is considered the mother of the MP3, as her voice was used to analyze different sound spectrums when creating the algorithm necessary for compression.
The artist Prince played 23 different instruments in his debut album, For You.
In his earlier years, a financially distraught Prince would cruise local McDonald's just to smell the food.
Elvis was actually a blonde who began dyeing his hair black in high school.
Enya is the world's top-selling artist, but has never gone on tour.
Duran Duran took their name from an evil scientist in the movie Barbarella.
Frank Sinatra once said of rock music, "The most brutal, degenerate, vicious form of expression it has been my displeasure to hear."
Metallica is the only band to have played all 7 continents.
Guns N' Roses' Axl Rose used to earn $8 an hour smoking cigarettes for a science experiment at UCLA.
Alanis Morissette was a regular cast member on Nickelodeon's You Can't Do That on Television.
Freddie Mercury's birth name was Farouk Bulsara.
Tina Turner was born as Anna Mae Bullock.
Those closest to him knew Vanilla Ice as Robert Van Winkle.
Singer-songwriter Sia wrote Chandelier about her struggles with alcoholism.
Leona Lewis, Adele, and Jessie J all graduated from the Brit School together.
Cher is the first and only female performer to have landed #1 singles in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, from I Got You Babe in 1965 to Believe in 1998.
Life is such a pain.
For this week's music special, let's take the scenic route as we make our way through the music of the 60s. 1960 sees Elvis Presley return from serving in the Army and resume his music and acting careers. He would still manage to release both the #1 and #2 hit singles of the year. Across the pond, John, Paul, and George would play as the Silver Beatles and would make their first tour, opening for Johnny Gentle in Scotland. Frank Sinatra would open his own record label in 1961, Reprise Records, which later releases the likes of the Beach Boys, Jimi Hendrix, and the Kinks. Later that year, at a train station in Kent, England, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards met for the first time. Bob Dylan's self-titled debut album would see its first release in the spring of 1962 and start his rise as one of the most influential folk artists of all time. This year, the Beatles fire their drummer, Pete Best, and replace him with the now famous Ringo Starr. With their lineup complete, Beatlemania officially kicks off in 1963 as the band releases their first album and stays at the top of the British charts for 30 straight weeks. It's 1964, and the Rolling Stones release their debut album while Beatlemania now reaches the US. Indiana Governor Matt Walsh declares the song Louie Louie by the Kingsmen pornographic. The publisher offers a reward for anyone that finds a suggestive lyric. As we reach the latter half of the decade, Motown would see the Temptations' My Girl reach #1, while the Supremes would have their 4th and 5th consecutive #1 singles, Stop in the Name of Love and Back in My Arms Again. Just to show it can be done, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass placed 5 albums on the Billboard pop charts at once in 1996, setting a world record. 1967 marks the release of the groundbreaking Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles, while American music sees Jimi Hendrix kick off his tour in London, where he sets fire to his guitar on stage for the first time. Early in 1968, Johnny Cash performs his famous concert at Folsom State Prison, and Broadway sees the release of rock musical Hair at the Biltmore Theatre. As 1969 brings the decade to a close, we see the British invasion and hippie movements coming to an end. David Bowie would release his hugely successful Space Oddity, but the Beatles would also perform for the last time in public. And of course, over at a small dairy farm in upstate New York, a small music festival sees the 60s out with a bang, when acts like Janis Joplin, The Who, Joan Baez, Santana, and Jefferson Airplane, among many others, play the now infamous Woodstock. Now quick, let's put the Wayback Machine into overdrive before the Bee Gees show up and we get any disco on us.
Well, you can't tell by the way I use my voice, I'm a woman's man.
The type of music you listen to affects the way you perceive the world.
Your heartbeat changes and mimics the music you listen to.
Music is one of the very few activities that uses the whole brain.
A favorite song usually becomes so as we attach it to an emotional event.
Babies are twice as calm when listening to music than when being spoken to.
Like humans, Birds can learn music while still in the egg stage.
Flowers can grow faster by listening to music.
Loud music increases alcohol consumption.
The Japanese word karaoke comes from a phrase meaning empty orchestra.
Music triggers activity in the brain that also becomes active during sex or eating, which may explain why the three are often synonymous.
The stopped anapestic beat of music from hard rock artists like Led Zeppelin, The Doors, Janis Joplin, Queen, or Alice Cooper is known to make the muscles of the body go weak.
Mozart's music and Baroque music at 60 beats per minute activates both sides of the brain, thus increasing your ability to retain information.
Music also enhances emotional intelligence.
It increases alpha and theta waves in the brain, which result in amplified creativity.
From a medical perspective, music boosts the immune system.
Music can also reduce blood pressure and releases endorphins that counteract pain.
Babies are born to dance. At the young age of 5 months old, babies respond rhythmically to music without any direction to do so.
The oldest evidence of music dates back to almost 43,000 years ago.
It is strongly believed that our Neanderthal cousins were unable to achieve social unity because they lacked art and music.
Singing socially has been proven to unite us in ways that little else can. This is probably why many countries adopt national anthems, and why concerts seem to leave many goers in a euphoric state long after the event. When I was in high school, I had the honor of being taught by some amazing instructors, but none stood out for me as much as Lynn Charles Foster, better known to me simply as Mr. Foster. He was in no way a typical art teacher. He was the art he loved and the art he created. He always had an affinity for landscapes, and had a knack for capturing some intimacy in what he saw. Landscapes are a dime a dozen in the art industry, but a good landscape draws you in and beckons more from its viewer, like this painting of Sheldon in the summer. It isn't hard to stare at this piece and suddenly begin to feel as if that warm glow is bouncing off your face. That warmth then pulls you in into that quiet stream, the playful meadows, or a distant memory of your own summer adventures. Some of my favorites were pop art inspired pieces from his circus series or his toy series, which included both two-dimensional art and sculpture. To me, they were fun and flirty representations of modern life, a mockery of excess and indulgence. Now, many years later, while Mr. Foster continues to paint, he begins to explore the world of music with more force. He started playing the guitar back in the early 1960s, and began writing songs in the 1970s, but it wasn't until he retired and hit the 60s himself that music began to pour out of him. Going simply by Chuck Foster, he teamed up with the hit City Band featuring Emmy Award-winning producer and musician Tim Brickley. The first album was just released and appropriately titled The Songs of My 60s. It's a beautiful compilation of soft hits like Standing on the Shore or Step Back in Time, and that's exactly what this album personifies. The well-written lyrics are a journey of discovery and acceptance. They offer us a glimpse into the world of Chuck Foster, the artist, the musician, the innovator. One of my favorite songs, Guarantee, is like a Beatle-esque Beach Boy extravaganza. It's playful and relevant, which is probably why he has hit the charts of Reverb Nation's music community with force. I'll leave you with this excerpt from his song, Love's Magic Garden, which seems to channel a young Morrissey. Rock on, Mr. Foster.
Wake up from our sleep. We have promises to keep. It's time to start all over again.
In Panama, circa 1989, the military blared AC/DC music in Noriega's compound for 2 straight days. The dictator surrendered shortly after.
The British Navy uses Britney Spears songs to scare off Somali pirates.
It was said that while performing in front of a large lake at the Crystal Palace Bowl in London, Pink Floyd played so loud that it caused many fish to die.
The first pop video released was for Bohemian Rhapsody in 1975.
MTV launched music television history with the premiere of Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles.
The most aired video in MTV history is Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer.
A man in Hawaii sold 1,000 tickets to a fake Spice Girls concert. When arrested, he claimed to be raising money for a nose job and a sex change.
For every 1,000 US dollars of music sold, the average musician makes $23.40.
Before becoming Elvis' agent, Colonel Tom Parker ran a troupe of dancing chickens.
Colonel Tom also made sure to cover all bases by selling both I Love Elvis buttons and I Hate Elvis buttons.
Iggy Pop, Mick Fleetwood, and David Soul have each guest starred on episodes of Star Trek.
Of all people, on average, musicians have the lowest life expectancy on Earth.
The highest-ranking musicians in ancient Egypt, the Shemayet, were mostly women.
The harmonica is the world's best-selling instrument.
The ocarina, a musical wind instrument, is also known as the sweet potato.
With current sales at over 10 million a year, LPs are still around.
A piano covers the full spectrum of sound, with the lowest lows and highest highs of any instrument.
The renowned composer Tchaikovsky was financed by a wealthy widow for 13 years, and at her request, they never met.
Monaco's national orchestra is larger than its army.
Madonna was protected by 10,000 soldiers and riot police at her Moscow concert as Russian Orthodox Church members staged a large protest against her self-crucifixion stunt, which ultimately became an infamous part of her Confessions tour.
What's ahead, my life?